we will get started here. So good morning, and thank you for joining us today for Creative Mornings Winnipeg. My name is Lindsay Lambert, and I'm going to be your MC for this morning. And today we are gathered in the beautiful Manitoba building of RRC Polytech. The name of the building was gifted by RRC Polytech elders. The name of the building means where the Creator sits and brings light, and we believe that Creative Morning brings light to all of us each month. We are currently gathering on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Dene nations on the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. I acknowledge that the water I'm drinking today is sourced from Shoal Lake 41st Nation, and the electricity that powers this building is from Treaty 5. We also want to acknowledge that June 21st is Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. We hope that you will consider how we can individually and collectively spend time that day working towards reconciliation through dialogue, education, and the celebration of incredible gifts, including the amazing examples of creativity and innovation that Indigenous peoples have contributed to our world. We welcome those who are watching this event through our live stream on the New Media Manitoba YouTube channel. For everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us, and hello. And also a special thank you and shout out to RRC Polytech and the ASL English Interpretation Program students and faculty members who will be providing interpreting services today. So thank you so much. So for those of us who are also in the room today who might be looking for the Wi-Fi, we do not have it available, just heads up. So sorry about that, but hopefully all of you have great data because the signal is quite powerful in here, so you should be covered well. Bear with me one quick moment, sorry folks. Just for a couple of quick housekeeping items as well. For any of you that may need to use the washroom or gather any water during today's event, just out through the doors to the left, you'll find the washrooms and the water station for you there. And also there's gonna be a few volunteers also in the audience today that are gonna be in teal lanyards. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them for any questions regarding Creative Mornings or how you can also get involved. We're always looking for volunteers, so whether you would like to volunteer your time or maybe be an MC like myself today, we're always looking for folks. Along with that too, the indoor mask requirement at RRC Polytech ended today. Of course, masks are still a personal choice, and we do ask that you respect that choice for each individual who is present today. Just to give you a quick rundown of today's event, we will start today's program with a performance by local musician Taylor Fleming, and then you will be invited to talk to your neighbors about the theme of wilderness. We will then invite you back to today's main stage to hear about today's speaker, Kelly Thibodeau, who is usually up here as MC, but she is going to be our exciting keynote speaker today. And personally, I'm very excited. I've been to a couple of these sessions, so Kelly, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So before we go any further though, please note that Creative Morning events are going to be recorded by both video and photography and will be used on our social media and websites. You will see our Creative Mornings Winnipeg photographer, Gabrielle Touchette, and our videographer, Mayo Sawamimo, moving around the space as well. We also have Olivia and John from our New Media Manitoba helping out with our tech and streaming supports as well today. So thank you all so much again for making today possible. Along with that too, we will be taking the month of July off to give our volunteers some rest, and we'll see you all back here in August on the 27th. So make sure to stay tuned for an announcement on the venue and the speaker for the event, as the theme will be critical. Actually, that's literally the theme. Sorry, that sounded that sounded really dangerous, but yeah, it's that's really funny. Okay, yeah, the theme is critical. I'm sure it will also be critical to stay in the know as well. So to keep up to date on Creative Morning News, make sure to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter at creativemornings.com/Winnipeg. And then lastly, before we really dive into today's event, we do want to say thank you to our global and local partners. Without them, we wouldn't be able to get to do the fabulous work that we do each month. Starting first with our global partner, MailChimp. Want to find out how you can stack up against your peers? They've got you covered with the results of the 2022 MailChimp and Company Benchmark Report. There you'll find insights from freelancers and agencies across the globe who've generously participated in this worldwide survey. Thank you also to our local partners. You can see these awesome partners now on the screen in front of us. To the Creative Morning Winnipeg Steering Committee, thank you so much for your hard work, always putting these events together. Just a side note, I'm a little bit newer to Creative Mornings, but it's such a wonderful opportunity just to kind of network and learn about kind of different viewpoints and what makes Winnipeg so fun and unique. So again, to those partners, thank you so much, and for that committee. Okay, so let's actually get started with today now, after giving some great acknowledgement to the great staff and the team that makes everything possible here. So we're going to start with some music to get the morning off kind of started. Taylor Fleming is a fiddler player from Manitoba. She first started learning the fiddle when she was 9 years old through a Manitoba Métis Federation funded fiddle program and instantly fell in love with it. Today, she is grateful for all of the opportunities she has had and is in awe of the places she's been promoting Métis culture through the art of traditional Métis fiddle music. If you could all help me welcome Taylor to the stage.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. As she said, I'm a fiddle player from Minnetonka, Manitoba. I've been playing since I was 9 years old, and it kind of just feels natural now. I started learning from a slew of Métis fiddle instructors, and have been able to showcase, I guess, my culture through my music. And it's always exciting to get the opportunity to come and meet some new faces and play the traditional tunes for you. So I'll start off with what is called our Métis National Anthem. It's called the Red River Jig.
Thank you so much, Taylor. So each month, Creative Mornings chapters share a global theme to reflect and contemplate on. June's theme is wilderness, chosen by our chapter in Chattanooga and illustrated by Holly Chaston. To travel to the edges of our known world, to wander, to lose ourselves, to commune with the wilderness. Some of us seek enchantment, and some of us seek enchantment and estrangement here. Some of us call it home. So I was asked to come up with one of my wilderness examples. And to be honest, this word is really powerful to me. I think there's a lot of fun examples I can come up with in my lifetime, even though I was going to make a joke about being young, but I'm actually still quite young. So one of my examples I want to share is a couple months ago, I went on my first trip after the pandemic kind of started cooling down a little bit. I went to Squamish, British Columbia, which I thought was quite appropriate with the wilderness, since it's just a really beautiful kind of city to go and explore. But for myself, I was extremely overwhelmed and feeling quite scared to go on this trip, as I was going with some friends who are boulder climbers. And for any of you who are unfamiliar with what that is, it's essentially free climbing rocks. Seems quite silly to me, but they insisted I come, so I said, sure, I would love to fall off a rock with you. But I went, and for my whole lifetime, I really convinced myself that I was quite scared of heights, and trying new things can always seem quite overwhelming. But the theme that we gave that trip was dare to fail, and we did, and multiple times. And I think it's just such a great kind of mantra of going through life, that those moments of failing and falling and getting back up is what it's really all about. So I love that the theme is that for today's talk, and I encourage you to kind of think about some of those that you've experienced for yourself. Don't be scared to, or dare to fail. It's really kind of the best lesson in life. So for today's breakout conversation, we invite you to consider the theme of wilderness. Where is your creative wilderness? How do you approach new creative adventures that might be scary and exhilarating at the same time, like a trek into the unknown? So for all of us that are at our respectful tables there, we would encourage you to kind of take the next 8 minutes and then talk with those around you for 8 minutes, and then we will invite Kelly to come up and share her story. If you're not sure about sharing right now, we do invite you to break out of your comfort zone and remember how being engaged in our activities can really have a positive impact on the others around us. You never know what kind of impact you may have on someone else today. Plus, it's Friday, so let's have some fun with it. So let's take a short 8-minute break here and yeah, enjoy connecting, and we'll come back soon. Thank you. So thank you so much for jumping into such great dialogue. I was kind of looking around the room. Looks like there was a lot of great laughter and smiles, and I mean, that fuels me. So it looks like everyone's having a good time and enjoying the theme for this month. So next up, I am pleased to introduce Christian Robin, the co-host for Creative Mornings Winnipeg. He's a proud Francophone Métis serial volunteer for great causes and a successful entrepreneur at RRC Polytech as Director of Marketing and Web Presence. Side note, he's also a great boss. Good job, Christian. So I'm going to invite Christian up here next to go ahead and read our manifesto and introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thanks for volunteering today. So welcome, everyone. Creative Mornings chapters exist in over 200 countries all around the world. Each chapter not only celebrates creative talent, but we also promote an open space to connect with like-minded people, as you probably just noticed. To help ensure this, Creative Mornings is guided by a powerful manifesto. We read this manifesto at every event, and it's my honor to read it today. Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery, action, honesty, and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate with you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections, virtual ones too, in learning from others, in jazz hands and high fives. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities all around the world. Everyone is creative. And locally, the Winnipeg chapter has made an additional commitment of its own, a commitment to reflect diversity and ensuring inclusion for our events. This is that statement. Located in one of the most diverse communities in North America, we are as inclusive as we are creative, and we will be creative in order to achieve inclusion. We believe in the value of diversity, of perspectives, audiences, and industries as we create safe events to debate and discuss what it means to be creative. We will celebrate multiple approaches and points of view, and we will be mindful and purposeful in building a culture where these differences are not only valued, but celebrated. And finally, for me, it's my esteemed pleasure to welcome our speaker for today, Kelly Thibodeau. Kelly is a technical writer, turned digital communicator, turned entrepreneur, and the founder of Squarely Social. She helps people create digital strategies that reach and connect with their audiences through consulting, workshops, and one-to-one coaching. Might take you up on that. As a content strategist, facilitator, and instructor for over 25 years in corporate and post-secondary settings, Kelly's work helps people think differently. She believes that people want to engage with companies that show the relationships means as much as the transactions, and that curiosity, empathy, and integrity are what stand out most in today's marketplace. I certainly would agree with that. Kelly and I have only been friends since 2021, but she's been on LinkedIn since 2006, which is odd because I'm quite active. Anyway, she's had too many browser window tabs open ever since. Welcome, Kelly. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for coming out this morning. It's a little bit of a different experience being the MC versus being the speaker. So just really appreciate you coming out on an early Friday morning to join me. Creative Mornings is really near and dear to my heart. I'm on the steering committee, I'm a sponsor, and like I say, this is like a little bit of pinch me moment. I've been fangirling around Creative Mornings since 2020. And I'm really touched that you've been here, that you are here to listen to my story, including my dad and his partner sitting over there. So thanks for coming. I will share as honestly and candidly as I can, embracing that my vulnerability will help you in some way by sharing my story. I also want to acknowledge, and I'm going to read this part because I crafted it a little bit carefully, so I want to acknowledge that as I share my story with you, I'm aware of the privilege I have as a white, straight, able-bodied, cisgendered woman. I acknowledge that not everyone shares that privilege, and that the same systems that continue to benefit me are not always designed to benefit everyone. I also believe that as a person with privilege, I am both capable and responsible for helping to change that. Okay, now I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to invite you to do the same. Go to the next slide. Okay. So I'm starting my story in 2017, what turned out to be an extremely difficult year. I'd been working in a financial services organization for nearly 13 years and had worked my way up to middle management. I'd been in a role leading the social media strategy, growing and leading a team of 6 people in 2 locations. There were some leadership changes at the end of June, and that year my position was moved to Toronto and I was laid off. It was devastating. I probably cried every day for at least 2 weeks. I was devastated for my job, but I was devastated for the people that I cared about and that I worked alongside. I had hours-long phone calls with people that I cared about deeply and who reached out. And you know what? I thought I'd take 2 or 3 weeks off and get right back at it. I had quite a few interviews, but I never actually managed to land the job. I was told that my salary expectations were too high and that I should be prepared to take a more junior position. And then on August 23rd that year, my mom died after being neglected at the nursing home she was living at. And I thought I might get a little emotional in this part, despite my practice, but my mom had a neurological condition. She had dementia, and she was in a wheelchair. And she depended on another human being for every aspect of her life. And when she died, it was sudden and traumatic. And I was grateful that I could be there for her around the clock, and I didn't have to get anyone's permission to take time off to do it. Grieving my mom's death was one of the hardest and most painful experiences I've been through, and it's taken a long time to heal. And that fall, I kept putting out resumes, but the interviews dried up. And then on Boxing Day, my grandmother passed away at the age of 97. And once again, I was grateful to have been by her side for every moment. So we'll go to the next slide. And then in January 2018, everything seemed to turn around. I found myself in the fortunate position of having 2 job offers, and I decided to take an opportunity working as a consultant in a local consulting company on a project in the healthcare industry. And what I thought would be an interesting role in a new industry turned out to be an undefined role in a hostile environment. I left the office crying most days, which was pretty unusual for me. And after 2 months, I was called into the boss's office, and I was told that I was too junior and had nothing to offer the team. And I was let go from that job and from the consultancy that had hired me. I was relieved, but I was also confused. My self-esteem had taken a big hit, and I started to wonder what I was really cut out for. Next, I decided to take a part-time teaching job at a local community college so I could build my business and still earn a predictable paycheck. It turned out that the opportunity was not quite what I thought it was, and this time I'm the one that chose to leave. From the summer of 2018 to 2019, I took on a marketing manager position at a local pet insurance company to cover a 1-year maternity leave. I took the job because I wanted to round out my knowledge about digital marketing, and it turns out the team there was pretty dysfunctional. So I was brought in to make some changes. In some ways, that role was a perfect fit for me. It wasn't easy, but it showed me what I'm really good at. And as that role ended, I also had the good fortune to start teaching part-time at the University of Winnipeg. I found a way to fuel my passion for teaching, build my credibility, and give me something to talk about. And it taught me a lot more about myself. Plus, it gave me some assurance that I was not going from a salary to nothing. Next one. So some people become entrepreneurs because they have an inner calling all their lives. Not me. If I hadn't been laid off, I would never have considered it. But lots of people who knew me and knew my work said that I would be really great at it. This required a trip into my own wilderness. I thought I'd try taking what I thought I was good at and seeing if anybody else would think that I was good at it too. And it's a really weird thing to think about putting a price tag on your own work. I'm also a planner, and so I decided if I was really going to take a run at doing my own thing, I needed to figure that out. So I took the Women's Enterprise Center business plan workshops, and I offered to volunteer to support the social media strategy for a local women's leadership event that they put on. Volunteering was probably one of the best decisions I made in starting my business. And I'll be completely honest, I didn't do it because I wanted to volunteer or I had time to give away. I did it because I wanted to go to that event outside of my former corporate identity and build a new experience for myself. What I didn't realize at the time was that it gave people a chance to see me doing the work that I wanted to do in my business. And additionally, when the interviews dried up, I felt like I needed someplace to go where I had to put makeup on and get out of my yoga pants, pre-pandemic. So I decided to start going to a career club that Carrie Twig was running in Osborne Village. And that was another great move that really helped me to see myself and my work differently. I registered Squarely Social with the company's office and launched the brand in 2018. I kept volunteering for more local events, doing pro bono work with a local nonprofit, and I got hired to speak about social media strategy, and I had some clients on the side while I was still working full-time on contract. I never completely gave up the idea that I could still go full-time in my business. This was pretty new thinking for me, and I went through an identity crisis. I didn't know who I was anymore. Was I an entrepreneur, an employee, an instructor? A coach that I was working with at the time told me it was possible to be all three and still be the same person. In fact, she told me they weren't separate, they were all connected. So after the contract at the pet insurance company ended in August of 2019, I went full-time into my business. I didn't have a waiting list of clients. I had a teaching contract, a couple of clients, and the willingness to figure things out, and a lot of support from my husband, who has never stopped believing in me. My story would be very different without him cheering me on. Revenue was not replacing my full-time salary, and I even had to dip into some retirement savings until things started to pick up. I'm gonna grab some water. And a deep breath. So I'll start off by saying that entrepreneurship gets a lot of buzz these days. It feels like it's everywhere. Everybody's quitting their 9-to-5 to live their dream. And anyone who's an entrepreneur knows that running a business is a lot of work, especially in the beginning. You become the salesperson, the person doing the work, the person who pays the bills, and the person who sends the invoices. And getting paid can take up to 30 days, which is a big difference from a direct deposit every 2 weeks. Nevertheless, I started to explore what I wanted my business to be, and I also felt an enormous sense of freedom and renewed purpose. So here are some things you can do as you explore your own wilderness. First is find your creative spark. Define creativity the way that you want to. I didn't consider myself creative. I'm a technical writer by background, which means I formatted, wrote, and edited policy and procedure manuals and online help for software applications. My career wove its way into corporate communications and web writing, in my mind, all boring, non-creative things. And when I pictured pure creativity, I didn't picture me. I pictured artists, dancers, musicians, and when it came to marketing, it was Don Draper that was in the back of my mind. When I would share with others that I doubted there was anything creative about my work, they were surprised, and that surprised me. As I started to explore my own creativity, I started to remember some of the things that I loved doing as a kid. I used to make paper dolls, I loved hand lettering, calligraphy, and writing poetry, and I thought I had the drop on how to draw a really cool puppy dog. That was my special skill. I'll bet there's some things that you loved doing too when you were younger, so reconnect with those memories and remember what it felt like. I became aware of creative mornings through a friend I met in a coaching program. Winnipeg didn't have a local chapter at the time, but because of the pandemic, events became accessible online. I practiced calligraphy again. I attended sessions with people from around the world, and I started to believe in my own creative work in my business. I also became aware of my narrow view of the world. So I looked at creative mornings to help me broaden my perspective, and I started to believe that my work is creative. Surround yourself with creative people you admire and know that each person is creative. You are all creative because you're human. It doesn't matter what your work or your life looks like, you are creative. Next is when I thought about running my business and looking like I had it all together, I signed up for all the free things. And I thought if I could just copy that, I'd have it all figured out. What happened instead is that I got trapped into comparing myself by everyone else and feeling like I didn't quite measure up. It was also really distracting. This was a side of myself I never knew was there before, my wild side. Remember me? Corporate career, steady paycheck, conservative industry. This was something I'd never contemplated or experienced before. I talked to people doing interesting work and I asked them how they did it. This time, not so that I could copy them, but so I could challenge my own thinking and the ways I thought things could and should be done. So be willing to break patterns that no longer serve you. So as you're wayfinding your way into the wilderness, find a Sherpa. I became willing to work with coaches to help me see things differently, and I committed to that coaching. I intentionally invested money and set aside time to do the work, and I started to discover some new things about myself and the world around me. Of course, adventure also involves wayfinding, and wouldn't it be great if the entire path just suddenly unfolded in front of you? But take it one step at a time, because the path might not always be clear. Your direction is also informed by putting your hand up and volunteering to get involved. If there's a conference you'd like to attend or an organization you feel connected to, see if you can volunteer. It doesn't have to be doing what you want to get paid to do. It's about meeting new people and letting them get to know you. What I'm still learning is that when I started my business, I thought that once I figured out what I wanted to do, I just do that and just keep doing that. And what I'm learning is that my business grows and changes just like I do. I've also learned that living in the wilderness can get lonely. It's easy for me to get trapped up in my own thinking and hard for me to keep showing up. And in a service-based business, doing your own thing involves a lot of experimenting, and you put yourself on the line every single time. Today, I work with organizations to create digital strategies that bring their business goals, their audiences, and their values to life in website content, search marketing, and social media marketing. I've worked with over 36 clients across Canada, ranging from small business to nonprofits to industry associations and national organizations. And this year, I developed my own training programs and launched on social media strategy and search engine optimization. There have been many times in my business when I feel stuck, and I've had to reconcile my own sense of who I am with where I want to go. At first, it was contemplating my identity as an entrepreneur. I thought I had to leave everything I knew from the corporate world behind so I could reinvent myself to be something different. And what I learned is that the corporate parts of me are actually assets in my business. I also am learning to recognize when I feel stuck and why I feel stuck, and that fear shows up a lot as perfectionism and procrastination. When I have a fixed mindset, it keeps me gripping tightly onto things that limit my ability to adapt and move forward. And when I can shift into a growth mindset, I see opportunities, I have faith that I don't have to have it all figured out and I don't have to know everything, and that I do have what I need and the right people around me to figure it out. I also have come to know that discomfort equals growth. Something new is on the horizon, but it often gets messy and it feels more like stuckness at the time. It's important to stay in the room when things get sticky, but it sure is hard. Another thing I'm learning is how important curiosity is. A lot of my work has been shaped and continues to be shaped by people asking me to do things that they see me being good at, and sometimes that means doing things for the first time. I look for ways to do things that I've never done before, and I trust that when people ask, it's because they believe I can do the work. I'm willing to put my best foot forward with the confidence to know that I might not know, or I might not approach something the same way that everybody else does, but that my ideas are valid and I'm capable of doing what I set out to do. People in my life remind me to be curious, and that means that I try to learn new things, ask more questions, and as a university instructor once said, notice you're noticing, which means become aware of your curiosity and explore it. This diagram shows the Fibonacci sequence. I do not profess to be a mathematician. However, it's a mathematical concept that shows up in nature, and it's a series of numbers in which each number is the sum of the two that precede it. starting with 0 and 1, and it continues infinitely. So starts right there with that white square. A coach that I worked with, and so anyway, as you go around the spiral, the steps get bigger and more expansive. And a coach I worked with used it to help people get unstuck. Anybody else a card-carrying member of the Overthinkers Club? And by starting with step 1 and taking the next immediate step without having to figure out the whole thing before you start. That way, the next steps become clearer, and it also becomes exponentially bigger. That's what I try to practice, and it's what I did when I thought about taking big steps in my business. Instead of getting overwhelmed with figuring things out, I could take the next step and have the faith that the step after that would show up. And it's what I keep going back to when new ideas bubble up. It gets me out of my head and into action, knowing that the first steps are going to be small, wobbly, imperfect baby steps. And it keeps me open to discovering new possibilities. It keeps me being curious, and it keeps me open to input from others along the way without getting too locked into what I thought the thing was going to be when I started. So I'd like to close with a quote from Brené Brown in her book, Braving the Wilderness. This book helped me understand and define what wilderness means to me, why often living in the non-conforming creative life can feel uncomfortable and unpredictable. It helped me understand the connection between discomfort and growth. So I'll read it. The wilderness is an untamed, unpredictable place of solitude and searching. It is a place as dangerous as it is breathtaking, a place as sought after as it is feared. But it turns out to be the place of true belonging, and it's the bravest and most sacred place you will ever stand. Thank you.
Still your kid. Your kid rules. Kelly, thank you so much. It's funny, coming into today's theme, all I could think about was Brené Brown, so I really appreciate you highlighting her. For any of you who aren't familiar with her, please take some time to look into her work. She does great research and writing on vulnerability and shame, and going into the wilderness and learning more about what we can actually do. Her work is wonderful. So we now have a few minutes before we wrap up here for some questions for our speaker, for Kelly. So for any of you that might have a question for her, feel free just to raise your hand and I'll call on you, and we can go from there. Christian.
When I first thought about my company name, I wanted to build something that felt like a sense of belonging and inclusion. And so I thought about social circle, which was taken, because the first thing I do is look for the domain name. I was talking to my daughter, actually, and she said, well, how about a square, like, a meeting place? And so I just flipped that into Squarely Social. And the domain was not being used. All the social media handles were not being used. And so that was a sign. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, thanks for that. My belief is that when your content is doing its job, it is social, and people come back to it and seek to find it. So rather than getting distracted with like algorithms and things like that, not that it doesn't affect like your visibility, but in really understanding who your audiences are, what their values are, and what they're really craving, then you create great content that keeps them coming back. So, yeah. Amanda. Depends on the day. Depends on how many browser tabs I have open. I would say sometimes I just have to tell myself, like, just it's the next step, do the thing. And even if, honestly, even if it's client work, I can procrastinate on that stuff too. Having great team members like you, my friend, helps me keep moving. But yeah, and sometimes it means I need a break. I should just go outside and take a walk and stop trying to sit at my desk for the next 3 hours and convince myself I'm doing something. So, which I don't, like, I know that, but to actually do it takes a little convincing. So sometimes I just need to step away. Yeah. Alana? Mm. 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 Well, I've been really fortunate the first couple of years. Honestly, people did a lot of asking, and so I just kind of showed up and did the work, which was interesting and a great way to start. But what I'm finding now is, especially this year, like consulting has looked really different, smaller scopes, smaller budgets. And so it allowed me the space to develop my own training programs. But I really felt like the message from the universe was like, okay, Kelly, what do you want this to be? And yeah, part of that procrastination sometimes is looking at job ads, honestly. And I just had to think about, like, why am I doing that? And it's often fear that's driving the bus when I'm doing that. But I do, like, have faith that as long as I, like, give back, right? So the communities that I'm part of, either online or in person, that I'm giving back to that, and that it will come together. But honestly, like, if I went back to a job, I don't feel like I would have failed as an entrepreneur. I think I've learned a lot about myself, and I'm not sure I could go back to the same type of job I had before I started my business. So, yeah, yeah, yeah. I try to reach out to people who are doing different things that inspire me, and then build a relationship there. There's the woman that I was talking about that introduced me to Creative Mornings. She's actually an American that lives in Paris, and she just has this amazing life and just the way that she thinks about life. And so I'll often, like, look at her work or set up a Zoom call with her, or, you know, like, any number of people, lots of whom are in this room, to just sort of fuel me and keep me going, because I recognize that my thinking can be pretty black and white and I don't always see the gray. So I try to remind myself, and I learned that through the coaching program, is instead of an either or, it can be a yes and yeah, there's a few things I have, like, written around my office and all that kind of stuff too. So it's not all good days. Like, I'm not trying to, pretend that it is, but I do have, like, a deep belief that it I can keep moving forward and seek input from other people. Yeah, Linda. Well, it's very different. Yeah, I can talk about LinkedIn until the cows come home, probably for a lot longer than most people want to. But it was an interesting journey, and thanks to Patrick for his support in helping me shape this talk and put it together, because it would look a little different. I said to him, I was like, do I have to start with the I was born in? And he's like, no, you don't have time for that. So it's just a really nice reflection for me too, on really thinking about how all this came together. And yeah, just you don't always get time to pause and do that, right? So it's it's a pretty cool opportunity. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're welcome.
It's funny now, after taking those great questions. I mean, I was taking the answers, I guess, but just being left with thinking about how we identify ourselves. And I think just hearing your story, Kelly, that's what life's all about, of, like, finding these different avenues. So thank you again for sharing. It's really great. So once again, we just want to thank everyone for kind of joining us today for a great discussion, and hopefully you all leave feeling pretty energized and inspired. It's still Friday, so you still got a whole weekend to enjoy. And again, thank you for RRC Polytech for hosting today's event. And then if you have anything to share with the Creative Morning Winnipeg organizers, please feel free to get out, just to reach out to them at any time. As mentioned earlier, we're always looking for new volunteers or MCs if you're interested in kind of getting some public speaking under your resume, I guess I could say. I also saw the theme critical next for August. I had to laugh. I'm so sorry about that earlier. It is so critical, you guys. But I'm sure it'll be another great discussion, so we hope to see you there. But to conclude today's event, I would really like to happily invite Taylor to come back up and play us one more tune. Once the music does play and wrap up, we do invite you to stick around to chat with our guest speaker and guests. It'll be just another great opportunity to network and kind of wrap up your Friday morning with like-minded and creative people. So thank you all again. Enjoy your weekend. And we all here at Creative Mornings look forward to seeing you on August 27th. So thank you. And Taylor, thank you. Thank you.